Yeah, we're waiting on a couple people for a quorum, but we do have a sign-up sheet if anybody wants to speak. And this is going to be the Industry and Labor Committee. All our committees got pushed an hour, so if you're here for public safety, enjoy the ride. Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. Representative, if you want to come to the front table or the podium, whatever you're more comfortable with. But I'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Industry and Labor Committee together, and I'll ask Representative Cameron, will you open us in prayer?
Let's go. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together today. Please give our speakers grace and wisdom as they speak, and us as we make decisions that affect this committee and the state of Georgia. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Representative. We want to welcome Judge Ben Vincent with us today. Thank you for being here. And with that, we have a sign-up sheet. Does anybody want to speak that has not signed up yet? Okay. Our first order of business, we're going to hear House Bill 569 from Representative Representative Howard. So, Representative.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Thank you, Vice Chairman and members of the committee. Again, this is House Bill 569. It's LC 461141. This is a Department of Labor bill that will provide claimants with the option of having the Department of Labor decisions sent to them electronically. This will modernize how the department is doing business, and it's claimant choice based and makes receiving decisions seamless for all citizens. Under current law, the department primarily uses the U.S. mail system to notify claimants of decisions they've made, and while they'll still have that option to receive that notification, again, this will modernize that approach and be beneficial to not only the claimants but employers in the department itself. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. We do have Deputy Commissioner Wesley Ross with the department here today and one of their attorneys. So.
Okay, thank you, sir. We'll take some questions from the committee. Number 17, Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my only question is, I know that we've been mailing it and making sure that they receive the notification, and now you're saying just only be sent electronically, or they opting out? I was trying to, so explain to me how that works.
Sure, yes, sir, great question. So they will still be able to receive those notifications by mail, but at the time they make a claim, they can choose to opt in and provide an email address to that way they get that notification decision much earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Number 16, Representative Schofield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say thank you for that option. If they've been waiting on the mail to get a decision, you have just made my life a whole lot easier, because I get called because they did not get anything. So thank you. I like this bill.
Thank you.
Number 25, Representative Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, by doing these electronically, you're going to have an electronic audit trail, and will these be put in on a server somewhere where they're stored, where if there's litigation or possible dispute over something, they can go back to and pull these up?
That's a good question. I'm going to defer to someone with the department and may provide some better details of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Testing. Okay. Yes, Representative Cameron. I'm Jeffrey Babcock with I'm the Senior Deputy General Counsel with the Georgia Department of Labor. I think I've been here and presented before this committee before. But yeah, the question, yes, there will be. Ideally, we're going to have every communication be posted in a portal that somebody can log into and see that there. And then we will also perhaps, be able to email that to folks, and there will be a paper trail in our system that will keep track, and all the federal retention, state retention requirements, auditing, all that will be there.
That was a follow-up about retention. We're going to follow retention.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing this bill. It kind of dawned on me that for just a bill to add additional language to make sure that notification will be sent via email, do you realize this is is this your first cycle as a representative?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. And I would probably like to add that It looks like you may have a string of very successful bills if you can just go through them and make sure that people are notified by email. There's a whole lot of these that you can do. Thank you.
I think it's a much improvement to this, and we can continue to do more. Thank you for your comments, Representative.
All right, are there any more questions from the committee? Is anyone that would like to speak on the bill in the audience? All right, Representative McLean. I got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Seaball, for helping me out there. I've got a sign-up sheet with 4 folks here. Anybody else? We'll still give you an opportunity. Come on up. Ron Stevens, Chairman Stevens. Trying to get my bearings straight. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. House Bill 574 that we're working off of today is LC 280680. What we have on the coast, if you'll notice, all the signatures here in coastal Georgia are some folks that may be double dipping, if you will, in our workman's comp scenario. All of our states surround us have done what this bill intends to do, and that's to allow the folks to decide which one they want to use, either the Georgia workman's comp or the one that they already have. This bill will do that. It basically limits the claimant, if you will. We want to get them back to work as soon as possible, get them well. And that's essentially the short of it. The bill strictly pertains to the international longshoremen. As you might imagine, those of us on the coast have a real interest in making sure that we are competitive with our surrounding state. And currently, I might add that I believe South Carolina is also working on the same measure. All the other states around us already do that. Mr. Chairman, that's the short of it, and I will answer any questions, and we have plenty of legal advice.
Is that Dewey or? Is that Dewey? Okay, so, Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Stevens, I heard you use the word double dip. So,
Thank you.
could you explain that to me, why you said that you use double dip?
Sure. Currently, they've got, the longshoremen have their own workman's comp, their own workman's comp coverage. Georgia also has a workman's comp coverage. So the scenario may be is a person may sign up for Georgia's workman's comp, which could actually come into play a little bit faster, and once it runs out, then use their other workman's comp. So this is one, you choose one or the other, but no double dipping, just like all of our other states.
Mr. Chairman, I guess, so you're saying right now what you're having is a problem of I'm getting state, and then I'm turning around getting federal, or
Yes, sir. They're not federal, their own workman's comp.
their own
plan.
workman's comp.
Correct. Now, this is exactly the way that the railroad works as well, where they only have one plan and they use their own workman's comp.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought this was a pretty simple bill until I got 84 pages of email information last night. We've got a couple of folks that want to come speak to us. We'll start at the top. Brett Hume with the tell us who you're with and
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Brett Hume, Southeastern Carpenters Regional Counsel. You may wonder, how do carpenters factor into the waterfront? Prior to my life with the Carpenters, I was president of the Savannah Regional Central Labor Council, which is the local AFL-CIO. And I became very familiar with the different unions, their jurisdiction, their membership, what they did. Specific to what you've heard so far, they are prohibited from double dipping. The way the scenario is set up, if they're hurt on the waterfront, they can apply for state workman's compensation, the $750 a week, and draw that until the federal workman's comp kicks in, which under the Harbor Act is their full wages. They then return back any monies they've received from the state, or it's deducted from their federal and sent to the state. So the state's not losing any money, none. They are prohibited from double dipping. The challenge becomes, and I would remind you, we're talking about an injured worker here. Should the employer, for whatever reason, decide to dispute the claim, you didn't get hurt out here on the waterfront. Under the state workman's comp system, they will get a hearing within 2 weeks. Under the federal, it could be 16 months, ultimately starving them out, forcing them to go back to work and get re-injured. Ultimately, worst case scenario, costing the state even more through indigent care, everything else that they must come off of. So I would tell you, they are not double dipping. They are prohibited from double dipping. It is illegal to double dip. It's just a coordination of benefits in terms of the injured worker. And I would remind everybody, we are talking about an injured worker here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
okay, question.
Yes.
But if they're wanting to opt out of the lesser system, the one that would pay them quicker, why would that concern, I mean, this body? I'm asking out of, I guess, ignorance.
That's a great question. Why would it concern? They're not choosing to opt out. Their employer are the steamship lines, not the Port Authority. Those employers are paying into the state workman's compensation fund.
But if we withdrew them, would they not? They would not. Those funds would not come out.
Right.
They would not pay into the system if we adopted this legislation. Correct.
Correct. And should that employer dispute the claim that they didn't get hurt on the job, you could be up to 16 months before a hearing was heard for that worker to draw the first penny.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Let's hear from Ralph Loberman. Sorry if I messed that up.
That's right.
Oh,
Chairman.
right here.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Ralph Lorberbaum, and I'm an attorney in Savannah, and I appreciate the committee hearing from us. I'm against the bill 100%. I probably know more about the interactions of the Longshore and Harbor Workers' Compensation Act and the state of Georgia Workers' Compensation Act than I would say anybody in the state. I've been handling state and longshore claims for over 45 years. Okay. Back in the late 70s, when longshoremen couldn't draw more than $91 a week, and state was about $70 a week. It wasn't much of a difference. The problem with the bill is a little bit like both the gentlemen have said. The problem is that, number one, there is no opt-out. If you're covered, you're covered. And you can't say, well, I just won't draw it. You still have the right to file a claim. But as was also pointed out, there is no such thing as double dipping. Under the State of Georgia Workers' Compensation Act, Section 343, an employer and the carrier can apply for a credit for any benefits, any income benefits that the injured worker receives under any other statute. Under the Longshore Act, Section 3E, it says that any amounts paid to an employee for the same injury or disability shall be credited against any liability that they get under the Longshore Act. Now, we're all here to worry about and see that the injured worker is taken care of. Unfortunately, timing is an important issue. You can't get a hearing under the state in 2 weeks, I beg to differ, but you can get a hearing within 60 to 90 days, and you can get a decision probably within 30 to 45 days thereafter. And if there's an appeal, probably no more than 6 months, so that if you get hurt and file a claim under the state, you can have a decision, you can get your medical benefits, you can get paid up to a maximum $800 in less than a year. A longshoreman can't get a hearing for close to, as was pointed out, 15 months. But it's not that quick, because after the hearing, the judge has to write a decision pursuant to the Administrative Procedure Act, the APA, and it's typically taking right now anywhere from 1 to 4 years to get a decision. Then you've got an appeal. If there's an appeal, it can take 2 to 3 years to get a decision. Now, an injured worker that files a claim under state wants to get better. Under the Longshore Act, he can draw a maximum $1,999 a week, far better than under the state, which is $800 a week maximum. So why doesn't he want to just stay under the Longshore Act? Because he's making a lot more if he's working. He might not be able to get better under the Longshore Act if the insurance company decides to contest the claim. And insurance companies are known to send injured workers out for what they call independent medical evaluations so that they can get a reason to dispute the claim, maybe cut the man's benefits off or the woman's benefits off. And if it could take 5 or 6 years to get a decision under the Longshore Act, sure, it's better to get $800 a week and get back to work so that you can make your money. And as I said, it's not hurting the state of Georgia. The chairman of the Georgia Ports Authority issued a report yesterday and said that the Georgia ports are growing faster than any other port on the East Coast and in the Gulf. Well, if this concurrent jurisdiction is hurting, why is business growing so much? And if we cut off the right to get a speedy trial under the state, what's going to happen is workers are not going to come to Georgia and join the International Longshoremen Association for fear if I get hurt, it's possible I could have to wait 6 years to get a decision, to get my medical care. And so they have to have a right to be able to get it without worrying, well, I'm not going to get twice as much money as I'm supposed to. The injured worker can never draw more than whatever the maximum amount is under the 2 statutes. There are only, I'll point out, 34 federal administrative law judges that handle longshore claims. That's part of the problem. They hear over 30 different statutes under the Department of Labor. And the backlog is that there's over 12,000 cases involving longshoremen pending. And that's why it takes so long to get a decision. But the longshoreman should be able to go under state or federal, wherever he can get his medical care, and get it quick so he can get back to work. The injured worker is the most important party here, not the employer, not the carrier, not the union. Employees of the Georgia Port Authority are not involved in this because employees of the Georgia Port Authority are excluded from the Longshore and Harbor Workers' Compensation Act by law. So we're not dealing with them. We're dealing with the injured work. We're dealing with individuals that work for the union, that load and unload the ships, move the cargo around on the port. And sometimes they have no problems. Sometimes the carrier antes up, pays them while they're out, no matter how much, gets them back to work. But sometimes it isn't. That's why I'm in business and have been doing this for over 45 years. But it serves no real purpose, and it doesn't help anybody to exclude these workers from the act. I'll be glad to answer any questions, explain anything about the law. I've been doing it for a long time.
We may call you back. We may call you back up. Let's answer a couple of questions.
Sure.
I believe Representative El Holly was first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Love, for you coming here and giving testimony. I want to thank you because you know, in deference of your own practice, you've seen this, and we know that you know, the chairman bringing the bill, very respected. I wanted to know from you, just from your standpoint, had there been a case, or maybe several cases, whereby an injured longshoreman was able to actually double dip, to get money from the state, get money from the longshoremen, the federal act, and actually withhold that, then would this bill be needed if that had been a case?
I have not seen what I think is double dipping. If we take an example of a state worker and he files and he's receiving state benefits of $800 a week, and I use that because that's the maximum in Georgia right now. If his average weekly wage is less, he'll be getting less. But whatever it is, if he draws it, and let's just say he draws it for a year, okay? So $800 a week for 52 weeks, $41,000, give or take. And he turns and gets released to go back to work. And now he says, well, I'm going to move over and file my claim under the Longshore and Harbor Workers' Compensation Act. The longshore carrier, if it's different than the state carrier, is going to get a credit for the $41,000 that he got, so that whatever he gets, only the difference between state workers' comp and the amount that he could get for longshore. So there's no double dipping. He's not getting more. As I said before, the maximum that he could ever draw is whatever the higher is between the two numbers.
So it's totally, on the federal side, he's getting that credit has already been documented that he received it from the state. There's no instance where on the federal side, the state and the federal, they're not talking to each other. They're definitely talking to each other about making sure that, you know, like literally, if the money's paid from the state, the feds are documenting that. There's no extra money that's coming.
That is correct. I can tell you, there's in probably 99% of the cases, the attorney representing the longshore carrier is also representing the state carrier.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, and so they know what there is, and they know how to file for the credits.
Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I guess Representative Holly kind of went into one of my questions. My only question now is, so if I file federal, what you're saying is if I file federal, it might take 16 months, 18 months, or years, or whatever. But if I file state, it's quicker. I'm just trying to figure out the reason that this bill is here among us.
I don't know why the bill is here in front of you. In my career of over 47 years representing longshoremen and state workers' comp, if a new client comes in, a longshoreman, when I file a claim, I automatically file a claim under the Longshore and Harbor Workers' Compensation Act, and at the same time, I will file a state claim. However, on the form that is used at the State Board of Workers' Compensation, there's a place on there, are you requesting a hearing? And I don't. I won't request a hearing if we're pushing it under the Longshore Act. It's only if a dispute comes up later.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and I guess that's why we're confused. It sounds like the bill is requesting out of a system that would actually make it easier. So I think, and I'm about to bring up, you said if needed, you were definitely needed. I wonder what myself and Judge Vinson do at 10 o'clock at night. We text about workers' comp bills. Okay, I think that's all the questions for you right now. Go ahead.
Can I make one more comment?
Sure.
So take an example of a case I had where I claimed that the injured worker was a longshoreman. In order to be a longshoreman, you have to meet two tests. One is status. You have to be involved in the loading, unloading, or moving of cargo. And the other is what's called situs, S-I-T-U-S. And that means you have to be injured on a maritime environment, adjoining a pier, a waterway. My client was working on the property of the Georgia Ports Authority. He was not an employee of the port. However, the port was expanding as it's doing and had moved, even though it was inside its own gate, underneath a highway. Well, there are cases out there that say that if you have a highway dividing your work from the port, you're not covered. So even though he filed the claim under the Longshore Act, the workers' comp carrier for the Longshore Act said, no, you're covered under the state, and only wanted to pay him, this was a while ago, I think it was $650 a week versus about $1,500 a week. So you can run into all sorts of disputes, and if you're claiming that you're a longshoreman and the insurance company disputes it, there are no witnesses, we think you were on drugs at the time, you're on alcohol, you were the instigator of a fight, and they don't pay, you might end up waiting 5 or 6 years for a decision. Whereas you could, being able to file a claim under the state, you can get into the state venue, a chance to win, get your medical care, and if you do win, and you then can go back under the Longshore Act, the carrier's going to get credit for everything they've paid.
But that's what's confusing. It sounds like this bill, they're willing to give that up.
They want you only to get, the way I understand it from Ron Stevens is, they want you to say you cannot file under the state under any circumstances, even if the employer wants to contest whether or not you were injured. Well,
Right.
why?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure
That's
out.
right. Why should he have to opt out of state coverage when he could get, he might have a family that's starving to death. And if he has to wait 6 years to get a decision from a judge, this way he might be able to get medical attention, get better so he can get back to work, and at least get $800 a week so his family doesn't starve.
But they're asking to give that up.
They're asking the injured worker to give that up. They're not giving up anything.
Okay. Let's go. Okay, we're going to probably come back to you. Matthew, come on up. Matt Campbell, tell us who you are, who you with. Yep.
Hey, yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Matt Campbell. We've been before you before. It's been a little while, but I have a business called Georgia Matters, and honored to have a client called Gateway Terminals. So, I guess to clear up a couple of things to what a guy said earlier, who I love like a brother, Brett Hume. This these employees we're talking about are great, and he did say this, hard workers, awesome people. You know, I'm a Savannah native. They're not employed by GPA. They're employed by the person who contracts with me, Gateway Terminals, which is the private business at the Savannah port who employ the ILA longshoremen, along with others. We heard that they don't double dip, and we don't even need to say that, I guess. It sounds kind of negative, but we heard not both plans. But as I understand, and I provided some documentation to you, that they do, right? And for reasons the attorney, I thought he was supporting the bill. He went up there with Chairman Stevens. I was like, who's that guy? I thought I was supposed to sit up there. But that's all good. So, like he was saying, you filed both. And yes, I've been made aware. I did not know at first that it takes longer to get the federal. But that's a separate issue. You know, let's work on that. Let's get the federal sped up. Because what's happened is, you know, someone, unfortunately, if they were hurt at work, you know, is filing and should be taken care of. And that is the reason for the U.S. Longshore and Harbor Act, similar to the Railway Labor Act, which I worked under for 24 years. It was known on the railroad that you did not fall under workers' comp because you had something better that was negotiated and argued 100 years ago in Congress, because these jobs are dangerous. They are hard jobs. It takes incredible people that sacrifice a lot to do these jobs. And so that's why those federal laws are in there, to protect them, to give them something better. And if you look at your documentation, you'll see how much better it is. If you look at the chart there, I can't read it from here because I need my glasses, but you should have it on a paper. It's just lining out the difference. It's almost twice as much, in some cases more than twice as much, as the premium federal longshore. That plan, obviously, you get to choose your own doctor instead of the employer choosing that doctor for you, which is a bonus, I would think, and some other reasons. The reason for this isn't some type of corporate greed or anything like that. It's just like anything else. It's to maintain competitiveness. So if you look at the East Coast, Savannah Port, Georgia Port, Brunswick, wherever you are, we're the gold star, right? We tout our port, the business that grows every day, and that's what we want. New York, Virginia, Florida, other states that employ the same craft, that do the same work, they have updated their code to the federal only. There's only a couple of states left that have not. One of them is where we're standing now, our beautiful place called Georgia, and next to us in South Carolina, which is our chief competitor at Charleston Port, which, as I understand, I do not work in South Carolina, but have been told of and seen, you know, documentation that they are pursuing something. This would help the port businesses that employ workers, and it'll help those workers by ensuring that those jobs in this port stays number one, stays the lead of the pack, stays ahead of Charleston, and that we keep the port rolling and keep people working so they can provide for their family. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, just had a question pop up, but, all right, maybe I'm a little slow in my light bulb coming off. So this is being brought by the union, not the workers.
No, sir.
This is from the workers.
This is
Who's it from?
The employers.
The employers. That's what I'm saying. That my light bulb was a little slow.
that's-
It makes sense a little bit more now. Okay. So this is from the employer side who is wanting this. Okay. All right. Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess my question is that I'm still my same question. Why? I mean, if it doesn't cost the state any, it doesn't cost federal. I mean, so why?
okay. One reason, and some folks I work with at Gateway Terminals would be here, and hopefully we'll get them here next week. One of them was actually the doctor here just now, and he's trying to watch live stream from the waiting area. One reason, if you look at the numbers, right? Take some ports in New York of comparable size, and you compare them to Savannah. The same number of cargo, the same number of employees, the injury rates, right? And it's not because the workers are unsafe in Savannah. It's just there's more, almost double, over 300 and something last year, versus, I don't have, somewhere on one of those sheets I handed out. So almost double the claims, and that could be attributed to because the ability to go and claim more and claim it twice, right? So you claim it under Georgia and you're claiming under federal. So that hurts your competitiveness right there. The more obviously claims you have when you pay workers' comp insurance and pay USL&H insurance, which is the type these maritime employers that employ stevedores, longshoremen, and such have to buy into and pay into, as they should, because of federal law, their rating goes up. The more injuries and claims they have, the more lawsuits that they're subject to, resulting in higher premiums, resulting in more money going out of the door and less money to be able to pay these employees.
Mr. Chairman, I guess my only concern is that now I see more. So the employer is saying they don't want to pay you our wages. Is that the
employers?
Well, the employer has to pay into UI wages. So are you saying that this would help them not pay? I don't know.
I'm not knowledge enough in the workers' comp law to know. All I know is the employer is asked for this to match other states that they're competing with, and because it's a deterrent from maintaining their number one status, and they want to take care of their employees. They do a great job. They pay thousands of people around that Savannah area and in other places that, these are great jobs. These are wonderful jobs, and they want to keep people working, keep unloading ships. I guess that's the main goal, right? To keep everybody staffed. And I guess I know, there's a federal law, you're do this, and whether it's because of bad information or whatnot that they get, instead of returning to work, you can make another claim under something else in state. I don't know how to explain it any better.
All right. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Representative Holly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Matt, for stepping up.
Thanks, sir.
I'm not anywhere. I wish I was clear-minded on this, but if the injured worker, they filed with the state, let's say the state, they do an investigation, do an inquiry, find out, wait a second, okay, he's actually been injured. Employee actually starts receiving, funds on that end. And let's say at the time that the matter is in review at the federal level, employee says, you know what, hey, I am actually covered under the Longshoremen Harbor Workers Act. But the feds, they understand how much money has been paid in workers' compensation from the state level to that employee, right? And so, would you agree that the federal government, they're aware of that?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, they're responsible for their plan. All I know is I heard earlier in testimony that there's no double dipping and that there's nobody getting both, but then I heard testimony that they immediately file both. And so that's part of the confusion, right? So they're filing both, getting paid from whichever one's first, once released to go back to work.
Yeah, but this
getting
the
rest of the payment.
Small example, right?
Which I would too if I had the opportunity, but I don't.
But small example. I'll give it, and this is allow me to kind of jump off subject for a little bit. Imagine, for instance, like let's say you and your wife, you're owed me. I'm owed some money back from you. You pay me. Let's say it's $50, right? You pay me $25, and then I can't reach you. I go to her. You're gonna communicate to your wife, hey, I already paid L $25, so now here's the other $25. I'm paid, right? So in this scenario here, back to this scenario, person's injured. They do an inquiry. The state looks at it, says, all right, you know what? You're owed this amount of money. And because employers are required to pay into workers' compensation, then you're going to get that money. So even if, let's say, I know that at the federal level that they are doing an inquiry into my injury, and they say, you know what? Hey, we're going to take this on, right? Unless there's actually a known case where they, rather, if they decide to take it on, they're only going to pay me what they're going to pay me, right? It's not like I've heard no instance, and I'm still waiting for this, like where we've heard where the employee who is injured is actually taking the money from both pots. Because you can file all day, right? But if I'm the one giving out the money and I've been aware or made aware in some respects that basically that money has been paid from the state already, well then I'm not going to pay that amount. I'm only going to carry over, the debt that is owed to him.
Right.
I'm not going to assume that he hasn't been paid.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, as I understand it, that's not what happens. As I understand it, they are receiving both.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And maybe that's the communication part on the Fed to the state and vice versa, but there lies the issue. There's a federal program that provides excellent coverage that was fought for and signed into law 100 years ago, similar with other crafts, airline, rail, and others. And then you got state workers' comp, which all the other employees that are not under a federal law abide by.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Matt. I think the part that doesn't make sense to me is that whether you file, if I file with the state and then I subsequently file federally, then my filing, just the simple fact that I filed, doesn't mean that I'm getting from both. I think for me, I would need to be able to see from the federal side, right, or at least from the state side, somebody show me where there's an injured person who at the same time they're getting the state money, they're getting the federal money. Because what it's sounding like is that the federal is being made aware that they've already received that amount from the state, and they're just picking up the tab from that.
So I'd be happy to provide that. I can get the info and pass it to you.
Yeah, let's, Chairman Vincent, come up here. A lot of smart folks on this committee, as you know, but we don't live, eat, and breathe workers' comp. So help us. Because I understand y'all dug into this very deeply in 21-22.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ben Vincent. I'm the Chairman and Chief Appellate Judge at the State Board of Workers' Compensation. And I'll just start right out of the gate, tell you my role here today. I'm not here to, give an opinion one way or the other on this bill. I'm just trying to answer questions and make sure you understand workers' comp law and any questions about the advisory council that I might be able to answer. So when I saw the bill introduced, a few people sent it to me, I checked it out, looked at the bill, and then when I saw the notice for the hearing, I'd reached out to Chairman Werkheiser and just wanted to offer any assistance I could provide. So what I will say, a few things. It seems like you've had good back and forth. I think if there's any questions that you have for me about the specific bill, I can probably help you understand that. I'll quickly say that, and then I'll just say a few words about advisory council. So, the bill, if you look at just in simple terms, if a state has concurrent jurisdiction, then you can use both systems. You could use the federal longshore, or you could use the state workers' comp system. If you're exclusive, that means you could only use one. So around the nation, it looks like about half the states are exclusive, where you must go, if you're an injured worker, you must go through the federal system. And then about half are concurrent, where you could use both. And so some of the questions in the back and forth earlier, I think that, I try to say it as simple as I can. Double dip, it depends on what you mean by double dip. If you could use one system and then use the other, if you want to call that a double dip, then yes, double dipping is allowed in the state of Georgia right now. If you're asking if you could use both at the same time to double the amount of money and indemnity benefits that you would get at the same moment, you can't do that, because both acts have provisions that offset. So if you get one, then it gets deducted if you get the other. So that's kind of the answer, simple answer for how they work in tandem. This bill would be an exclusive. This bill would set Georgia law up so that you only have the federal option. So So it would be an exclusive jurisdiction state. So this issue emerged several years ago. I have some clear memory of it. Some of it I had to just go back and find emails and kind of refresh and look at my notes. So I never saw a draft bill a few years ago, so I can't tell you if it would have been the exact issue. Seemed pretty similar, the concept. And, you know, in Georgia, we have the advisory council. Bobby Potter was here earlier. He had another meeting he had to run to. But Bobby Potter is the chair of advisory council, and he helps me whenever an issue emerges at the Capitol or within the board about a law or a rule. Then I can kind of turn to 100 stakeholders in the system and ask them. A lot of them are practitioners, all different parts of the system, and I say, think this over for me and tell me your opinion. Tell me what you think about this issue. When we did that about 4 years ago, the answer after studying, and they took information from Mr. Lorberbaum and from Defense Counsel and other sources, my licensure committee of advisory council came back with a report. The report given to me in October of 2022 was that there was no need for me to move forward and try to advance legislation on behalf of the State Board of Workers' Compensation. So I want to say that as clearly as I can. There was study done, analysis, and some of the same things that are being talked about today. When I asked my group of people, do you want me to do anything? They said you don't need to do anything right now. And I think you could probably get into all the reasons why they might have said that to me. And I just want to kind of tell you that's the report from 2022. In terms of right now, I'm happy to answer questions. I'll do whatever the chairman wants me to do. And that's kind of why I'm here today.
Okay. Representative Hawley. Was that you, McLean?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to say thank you very much, too, for helping me along, too, because I understand what you said about exclusive. So I understand that word real well, one. Two, time frame. I don't know. I mean, when you file a claim, if the federal takes longer or if the state's quicker, I don't know. But I do know if a worker is injured and he needs to take care of his or her family, they don't need to wait 5 or 6 years or longer. I don't know. So I don't see nothing wrong. I'm kind of like you. I don't see nothing wrong with what we have right now because it does allow the worker to do what he or she needs to do to take care of their family. I don't see where you can get more money you can't get. I've heard your testimony. I've heard everybody's testimony. I guess my question is, I need to ask a question, don't I? Is that right, Mr. Chairman? The question is, time frame wise, I haven't heard anyone say that the federal will be a whole lot quicker than the state. I have not heard that at all.
I am not an expert in the Federal Longshoreman Act. I don't try cases, haven't heard cases in the Federal Act, but I take what I hear from other sources, and it certainly seems like everything that I've heard that the federal system would be slower than the state system. I do want to say that I heard some fantastic things about the state workers' comp system today, so I'm very proud of that. Glad to hear you all think that we move fast and efficiently. So that's well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. You want to add anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I want to point out is,
Hey, grab that mic because we're being recorded.
the only thing I want to point out is in response to Mr. Campbell, and I appreciate everything he said. While the Longshore Act does allow an injured worker to select his doctor, but he said that we can't do that under the state. Well, we all know, and I know the chairman knows this, most all employers are required to post a panel of doctors where they get to put the doctors they want on that panel, and that's who the employee has to go to. So, they have a lot of control under the state. It's not the federal government that are paying the workers' comp. these companies like Gateway, they have regular insurance. Signal Mutual, AIG, AEU, Ace American. There's an insurance company that's paying. That's just for clarification. And as Representative Mr. McLean said, the whole purpose of workers' comp is to get the injured worker quick medical attention and get him better and back, at least back to some kind of work so that he can be productive. And that's the whole point of workers' comp, that you don't have to wait for a jury trial and you don't have to wait years. Hopefully, unfortunately, we get a quicker decision and move a lot quicker in the state than we do under the federal system.
Chairman Carpenter?
Thank you so much. I appreciate your testimony, and I apologize for walking in late. And I may have missed this, but am I not? Is it not true that the longshoremen just went through a union contract and it's a union organization? Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And is it not? Would it not also be true that there's probably shouldn't there be language in that union contract in regards to injured workers and how that's handled?
No.
I didn't touch that at all in the whole contract.
No, I think the whole point of the new union contract was money.
Oh, I mean, it's always money. I mean, let's just be
it.
honest. That's always what
right.
it is.
The way claims are handled is through the United States Department of Labor, and it's not part of a contract.
But does the union not intervene for the worker when that's going on?
No.
Well, why are they paying the union? Why are they members of a union if the union's not supporting them in an injury case?
If you're a non-union worker and you go to work for Gateway, then you might get minimum wage or slightly over minimum wage per hour.
Okay.
Okay. If you are a longshoreman and you're a member of the Longshore Union, then you're probably getting somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 to $50 an hour, time and a half overtime.
Okay.
More pay for working on weekends.
Yeah.
There's a difference between, minimum wage and $40 an hour. There's a real reason to join the union.
Yeah, and I'm not here to negotiate, whether it's good, bad, and different. What my question was is when a worker is injured and he is union, why is the union not having those conversations for the employee that they represent and that they represent with the federal workers' comp people?
I understand, but they don't.
Okay.
And I'm not aware, because I'm in contact with lawyers all around the country that do the same thing that I do.
Sure.
And I'm not aware or have heard any time that a union has come in on behalf of the injured worker. It's a claim that the injured worker has against the employer and its workers' compensation carrier.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I would think that as a
agree.
member of the union who's there to protect the worker, that they would intervene on their, because if he got fired, they would intervene, correct? If the worker was fired from the organization, the union would step up and help protect the worker.
Then these are items that are covered under the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board.
Right.
But they do not get involved in the dispute
In the
with
injured
the
worker.
employer.
Man.
Yeah,
okay,
that
thank you for the
surprises
education.
me
That's
too.
interesting. Thank you.
Hey, we've got about 4 more minutes. Hold on. Let's bring up, we're not going to take a vote today, so Ron, if you want to come up and close us out, unless you want to, Matt's anxious to talk, unless you want to yield your time, but we've got 3 minutes because I promised them they'd have the room at 3.
Mr. Chairman, the whole purpose of this bill is to eliminate confusion. We've got duplication, whether you file locally or whether you file with their own organization. There's confusion here, and that's the only reason we brought the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want to add anything, Matt?
Sure, I will. Yeah, like he said, just confusion, and I think you heard from Mr. Lauberman, the gentleman that was sitting here, the trial attorney who knew all about all the different insurance companies that he has conversations with. And the ILA union is a strong union. They're a great union, and those workers are I'm sure very proud to be that, and I'm honored to know some of those men and women that are in that union. But Gateway Terminals, the employer that employs ILA down in Savannah, I don't believe they have any minimum wage employees. Everyone there, if you've got a job, whether it's union or non-union, it's a dang good job. The next thing is there is confusion, and like he stated to Chairman Carpenter, there's confusion that only somebody way smarter than me that's passed the bar exam can find, and that's where we found ourselves, because it's not in the Georgia Code. So when it explicitly doesn't say you do not apply to Georgia workers' comp, some folks are able to tweak that and possibly earn some money getting folks to go after both. That's all I have to say.
Okay. All right. With that, we're going to be adjourned. Thank y'all.